In the last class, we had discussed the OS for embedded systems, and we had a brief review of the scheduling policies, because many of the embedded systems are real-time systems. So the basic job that OS kernel does in such embedded system is to schedule jobs satisfying the deadlines. Today, we shall look at these scheduling policies in more detail. The scheduling schemes can be broadly classified into two basic classes: dynamic scheduling and static scheduling. So in dynamic scheduling, processor allocation decisions are at runtime. That means when the process arrives or at scheduling points, these decisions are made. Static scheduling is that class of scheduling algorithms where the schedule is decided beforehand and the decision is not made at each scheduling point. So processor allocation decisions are made at design time, and dispatcher allocates processor when interrupted by the timer. And which process to be allocated processor, the policy to be followed is decided a priori, and the timer is controlled by a table generated at design time. Now this is possible in an embedded system because a set of jobs that would run is fixed and known a priori in most of the cases. So let's review the definitions that we had looked at in the last class for the purpose of studying the scheduling schemes. Let Ti be a set of tasks. Ci is the execution time for the task. Di is the deadline interval, that is the time between Ti becoming available, this is the point where the task is becoming available, and the time until which Ti has to finish execution. Okay? And Li is the laxity or slack, defined as Di minus Ci. So these are the parameters on the basis of which the scheduling scheme will be defined. First, we shall look at deadline based scheduling. Now here we are looking at two possibilities. One is simultaneous, that means simultaneous arrival of all the jobs with deadlines. So if we have a set of n independent tasks, any algorithm that executes the tasks in order of non-decreasing deadlines is optimal with respect to minimizing the maximum lateness. That means we have all the jobs and we know also the deadlines. So effectively it boils down to sorting the jobs according to the deadlines and executing them one after another. So here the assumption is all tasks arrive simultaneously. The second possibility is that tasks may not all arrive at the same point in time. So this is a asynchronous situation. So given a set of n independent tasks with arbitrary arrival times, any algorithm that at any instant executes a task with the earliest absolute deadline among all the ready tasks is optimal with respect to minimizing the maximum lateness. Okay? So this becomes a kind of a dynamic policy because it is looking at the tasks in a dynamic fashion, because all of the tasks have not arrived at the same point in time. So this scheduling takes place as the tasks are arrived and as the deadlines of tasks are examined at scheduling points. In fact, this algorithm is known as earliest deadline first algorithm, and this is basically your deadline monotone algorithm. Now what is interesting to note is that we are talking about independent tasks. That means here tasks do not have dependence on each other. So let's look at this earliest deadline first in an algorithmic framework, because this algorithm is what is to be implemented by the scheduler. So what happens is that when each time a new ready task arrives, it is inserted into a queue of ready tasks sorted by their deadlines. If a newly arrived task is inserted at the head of the queue, the currently executing task is preempted. Okay. So, if it is supposed to have the time chunks or the time slices, then the time slices are denied to the current task and time slices are allotted to the task which has got the earliest deadline. So, obviously, you can find that this ordering of the queue has to be done incrementally. So, that leads to the point that scheduling is complex in terms of the time complexity which is involved in the scheduling algorithm. Because we are not really looking at the scheduling overhead, because if the time required for schedule becomes large, then effectively what is happening? Your CPU utilization is going down because CPU is not doing the tasks. So, processes are to be sorted according to deadline at each scheduling instant. Okay. So, one way of doing it is maintain the sorted list as a heap, and update requires order of log n steps, because if you have to sort at each step, then that complexity would be order of n square. Okay. So, you would not like to have that. So, you have to use a kind of a data structure like a heap to maintain the ready queue for the purpose of scheduling. So, let us take an example to understand this algorithm. These are the tasks. We are considering 3 tasks, T1, T2, T3. They have got these arrival instances and these are the durations. Okay. And these are the deadlines. The duration is the time taken for their computation. So, if you look into this, these are the points where the tasks arrive. Okay. So, this is where the task T1 arrives, then task T2 arrives, then task T3 arrives. So, what happens first? Here, since this task T2 arrives, okay, and it has got a deadline which is closer than that of T1. So, the task T1 will be preempted and these will be scheduled now. Okay. Now, when the next task arrives, that means your task T3, it has got a deadline later than that of T2. That is why T2 is not preempted and it continues till it finishes its processing job. Then only your T3 gets scheduled. And what you find here, T3 gets scheduled before T1 because T3 has got a deadline which is earlier than that of T1. So, here what you can find is you are scheduling in a dynamic fashion. That means, whenever a task is arriving, depending on the deadline, the earlier task is preempted, and if it has got an earlier deadline, this task will be scheduled. So, in that sense, EDF is optimal for a uniprocessor with task preemption being allowed, because if I would not have the ability to preempt the task T1, okay, then it may so happen that I might miss the deadline for the other tasks. Okay. So, so what it boils down to is that if a feasible schedule exists, then EDF will schedule the tasks. What does that mean? That means if somehow I can schedule the tasks and meet deadlines, then I can do the same thing using EDF policy. In fact, EDF can achieve 100% processor utilization. Obviously, when I am talking about 100% processor utilization, I am ignoring the time taken for scheduling, okay, the time taken by the scheduler and that of scheduling of the job. So, if there is a deadline miss when I am adopting the EDF policy, what we shall find out is that the processor is being utilized almost at 100% of the capacity. That means there is really no time left for deadline to be met. Okay. So, this policy makes EDF attractive, but the other side of it is what? That at each point you have to do scheduling, there is a context switch has got overhead, scheduling algorithm has got overhead. And when we are talking about this processor utilization, we are not taking those overheads into account. Related to this, you have got this algorithm which is called least laxity or least slack time first algorithm. Now, in this case, priorities are decreasing function of the laxity. Okay. In fact, if you have seen, the EDF is also a priority based scheduling. I am just telling how the priority is to be determined. So, here what we say, less the laxity, higher the priority. And here also the dynamically priority would change and you would require preemption, because these aspects will be very similar to that of your earliest deadline first, earliest deadline based scheduling, simply is because your laxity calculation or laxity value would also depend on the deadline. So, it requires calling the scheduler periodically and recomputation of the laxity. In fact, overhead for many calls of the scheduler and many context switches. Okay. So, this is the overhead similar to that of an EDF. But what it can do, it can detect missed deadlines early, because it is looking at the laxity. Okay. So, the moment laxity becomes a negative in a kind of scheduling calculation, it can detect a possible deadline miss. But these would require knowledge of the execution time. In fact, EDF can be used even without the knowledge of the execution time. I just need to know the deadline and I can work with the assumption that if the process is scheduled, it should be possible for me to do what? Finish its execution within the deadline. So, let us look at this example of least laxity first. So, there are 3 jobs T1, T2 and T3, they are their arrivals, and here I know the duration and this duration becomes critical. Okay. So, you have got this T1, and if I come to this point, this is a point where the T2 arrives. When T2 arrives, I need to do a scheduling calculation. So, when I am doing a scheduling calculation, I shall work out the laxity. Okay. This is the laxity that I am calculating. Fine. 33 minus, why it is 33 minus 4 minus 6? Because I am looking at what is the current state, how much time would be required to finish the job and what is the deadline. So, this is the laxity for T1 and this is the laxity for T2. Okay. On the basis of that, what do I find? I find that laxity for T2 is less, so it should be scheduled. So, it gets scheduled at this point. Then again at this point the T3 arrives. I do the corresponding calculations and what I find is that for T3 this laxity value is minimum. Since this laxity value is minimum, now T3 gets scheduled. Okay. And then once T3 finishes, because I am not considering arrival of any other job, I shall go back to T2 because the laxity here is more, and accordingly I shall come to this point, and at this point I can compute the laxity and decide on which job to be scheduled next. So, this is the basic idea of least, that is laxity based scheduling. But obviously, the problem here is that you need to definitely know the duration of the computations. Now, when you really do not have a preemption, what will happen? If I try to talk about an optimal schedules in the sense of making sure the deadlines are met and the lateness is minimized, it may leave processor idle to finish tasks with deadlines arriving late. Okay, so, there may be underutilization of the processor, particularly for cases where we really do not want preemption. And knowledge about the future is needed for optimal scheduling algorithms, because without that knowledge I cannot make sure that the deadlines will be met. Okay. Now, I have already said that EDF is optimal if the task preemption is allowed and it not skipping the processor idle prior to missed deadlines. Okay. Now, if preemption is not allowed with the deadlines and if you really do not have complete knowledge about the future, what can happen? Let us look at this example. In this case, a task T1 is periodic. Now, what is interesting about periodic task? you know their arrival patterns. So in a sense, you know that in future what kind of tasks are expected. But T2 is not strictly periodic, and we are talking about an example where T2 occasionally arrive at times, let's say 4 into n plus 1, and its time requirement is, that is time taken for computation is 1, and its deadline is also 1. T1 has to start at t equal to 0 because it is there, okay. And what happens is, since no preemption is allowed, although T2 arrives at this point, my deadline will be missed, okay, and the process will remain idle at this point because I can have again arrival of T2 only at this point in time, okay. But there is a schedule which can exist. Schedule can exist if I start T2 first, but in that case I need to know that T2 will come. Okay, so if I am not having the ability to preempt a processor, I cannot really meet the deadlines if I have incomplete knowledge about the future arrival of tasks. Then we look at another possibility. So far we were talking about tasks without any kind of dependencies, but now tasks can really have dependencies among themselves because of the shared resources, also because of one computation may be dependent on another. So what we represent these dependencies by what is called a task graph. So in this case I have got the different jobs, okay, J1 to J8, and these are their computation times and these are their deadlines, okay, and the dependence of the tasks is given by this task graph. The arrow says that I cannot really have J2 executed before J1, okay. So the problem now becomes more complex because I have got the deadline as well as I have got the dependence, okay. So I cannot arbitrarily schedule the tasks without taking into account their dependencies. So how to do that? So in this case you get what is called a latest deadline first algorithm, okay. So although it is not that the task with the latest deadline is getting scheduled first, okay. So if that happens, then you cannot really meet the deadlines in many cases. So let us see what happens in this algorithm. So you have got simultaneous, this is assumption, work with the assumption, there is a simultaneous arrival of tasks, okay. So LDF, this algorithm, reads the task graph and inserts tasks with no successors into a queue, okay. It then repeats this process, putting tasks whose successor have all been selected into the queue. In fact, it is a kind of a topological sorted, but in an inverse way, okay. So you have got the sorted lists of tasks in the queue. What does this mean? The task which is at the top of the queue actually does not have any dependence. In fact, the task which has been last entered into the queue will not have any dependence. So among these, in fact, at each point when you are making a choice for a task to be put into the queue, you select the tasks with the latest deadline first, okay. You select the task with the latest deadline first for putting into the queue, okay. So if you now think about the queue, what happens? In the queue, at the end of the queue, you have got a task which is not dependent on any other task. And if there are few tasks over there which are not dependent on any of the other tasks, then at the top of the queue will be the task which has got what? The earliest deadline, because I have chosen the task with the latest deadline to go before this task in the queue. So the first condition is what? Dependence, okay. So if the dependence condition is satisfied, there will be ties among the nodes in the task graph. I resolve ties among the nodes in the task graph on the basis of their deadline, and I select the node with the latest deadline first to go into the queue, okay. At runtime, what do? I remove the tasks, or I execute the tasks in last in first out order, okay. So the task having earliest deadline and having no dependence will be executed first, and that order would be preserved for this entire queue. Now, obviously, you can realize here that this is possible only if you have got a simultaneous arrival of tasks. That means you know these tasks as well as their dependence and deadlines before you have drawn up the scheduling policy. Okay. So, LDF in a sense is non-preemptive and is optimal. Why non-preemptive? Because if you can define a schedule, okay, and that schedule will be decided by what? By the task graph, right, and their deadlines. So, consequently, you actually need not preempt the processes, because you are assuming that no tasks are arriving while the tasks corresponding to the task graph is in execution. Next, we shall look at periodic jobs, because so far we have not strictly considered the periodicity of the tasks for the purpose of scheduling. Okay. So, when we are looking at periodic scheduling, the parameters which will be important are obviously Ci, Li, which we have already defined, Di. Now, added to that we shall have period Pi. Now, here what we are seeing or looking at is a situation where my deadline is not same as that of the period. In fact, deadline can be before that of the period, deadline can be after that of the period, deadline can be actually coincident with that of the period. Okay, there are different possibilities of the deadline. Many of the scheduling policies for the periodic jobs that we shall consider, for them we shall assume that my deadline is actually coincident with that of the period. Now, for this kind of scenario, we can look at the processor utilization and the necessary condition for schedulability. Because here, if you look into it, intuitively what we are getting, that if I have Ci by Pi, Pi is a period, Ci is a computation time, if I know the computation time required for each task, then gives me the fraction of the period which is occupied by the actual computation of the task. If I sum it up over all such tasks, all such periodic tasks which are to be executed, their sum cannot exceed 1. Yeah, if their sum exceeds 1, that means they cannot be accommodated by the processor. Okay. So, an accumulated utilization will be mu, and mu is schedulable if mu is less than equal to m, if m is a number of processors. In a uniprocessor system, which is typically your embedded system, m would be 1. Now, therefore, what we are getting? We are getting a schedulability test condition. Now, why schedulability is important? Because if I have the periodic set of tasks, we know their nature of future arrivals. On the basis of their future arrival pattern, I can decide whether these set of tasks are schedulable or not. What is meant by schedulable? Whether I can run these tasks and meet the deadline or not. In fact, if you do the analysis, what we will find, this gives me a loose lower bound. You can even exceed this and still can do the scheduling. But this gives me a kind of a bound corresponding to the schedulability. It is a weaker test to check whether you can schedule a set of periodic tasks. So, for the periodic task, the most well known algorithm is rate monotonic scheduling algorithm. Now, here what are the assumptions? We are assuming that all tasks that have hard deadlines are periodic. All tasks are independent, and Di is equal to Pi. That means deadline coincides with that of your period. Ci is constant, that is from period to period the computation overhead or computation requirement does not vary, it is constant and is known a priori for all tasks. The time required for context switching also we are assuming will be negligible, the way we had done analysis for EDF. So, the scheduling policy is what? the priority of the task is a monotonically decreasing function of its period, and that is precisely the reason why we call this rate monotonic scheduling. Okay, the name comes from there. So, at any time, a highest priority task among all those that are ready for execution is allocated the processor. Okay. So, obviously here the what is the assumption? Assumption is you know the periods. Okay. So, you know their arrival patterns, you know their computation times, your deadline coincides. So, you can schedule right at the beginning, and you need not do the scheduling at each periodic arrival of tasks. So, this is an example. So, if you look into it, here what we are showing that T1 is at this point, and there are 3 tasks, and availability of jobs is this is T1, here it is T2, and here at this point you have got the T3. Okay. Now, if you are deciding on the schedule when the why here the preemption, if you look into it, that T1 fine preempts T2 and T3. Now, why this is being preempted? See, if you look into it, T1 when it arrived, it has been decided on a scheduling priority, fine. When your T2 arrives, what happens? Corresponding to the T2, what is being found is that T1 period is smaller, so it will have a higher priority. If it has got a higher priority, because where it arrives, see T2 arrives here first and then T2 arrives again at this point, fine. If the T2 arrives again at this point, what happens? The period for T1 is smaller, okay, than that of T2. So, T1 will have a higher priority than that of T2. So, when T1 is scheduled at this point, it has finished its job. So, when T2 arrives, the T2 will be scheduled at this point. But if the T1, next time T1 arrives, T1 has got a higher priority than that of T2. So, T1 will preempt T2. Okay, T1 will preempt the T2. Now, again when the T3 arrives, T2 and T3, what we say, do not preempt each other. Why? Because their periodicity is different and the priority wise they are scheduled in such a way that they do not preempt each other. Okay. Now, what is to be noted here is also important, that here it's with the RM, it's not a non-preemptive policy, it's a preemptive policy, and what we are telling is the moment I have got an arrival of periodic stream of jobs, I assign it a priority, okay, and then the scheduling takes place on the basis of this priority. Next, what we look at is issue where RM may fail. Okay. So, what we are looking at is task 1 is period 5, execution time to equal to 4, task 2 is period 7, execution time is 4, and if I do this summation utilization, although we are getting a 0.97, but if I am doing a pure RM scheduling, okay, so there would be a deadline miss. So, what happens here? Here the task T1 has got a priority which is higher than that of T2. Now, because of that, what is happening? T1 is scheduled here, T1 finishes its job, then only T2 can be actually scheduled. If T2 is scheduled here, now T2, if its execution time is 4, okay, so it is completing what? 3 periods. After it completes 3 period, what happens? Your T1, next job of T1 arrives. Since T1 has got a higher priority, then this will be preempted. This T1 will be executed. Since T1 will be executed, I shall miss the deadline, and missing computations getting scheduled in the next period. So, obviously, it is not that RM can in a sense meet always a deadline. Okay. So, on the basis of this rate monotonic scheduling, the next thing that comes up is a kind of rate monotonic analysis. Okay. So, rate monotonic analysis is basically for the purpose of deciding schedulability of a set of tasks, whether a set of tasks can be scheduled meeting the schedulability constraint. Now, schedulability for that purpose, why we call this as a rate monotonic analysis? I can adopt maybe a different scheduling policy, but what we are looking at that if they are scheduled according to their rate for a set of periodic tasks, how we can comment upon their schedulability. So, we need to understand the concept of what is called the worst case phasing of a task. The worst case phasing of a task occurs when it arrives simultaneously with all its higher priority tasks. Okay. So, that means if it is simultaneous with all its higher priority tasks, that means the higher priority tasks will be given the processor share. So, that would be the worst case for this so called lower priority task. And for a set of independent periodic tasks, if each task meets its first deadline with worst case task phasing, the deadline will always be met. In fact, this has been formally shown, and this is a test for deciding upon schedulability. Now, what it implies in this case is also that you can decide upon the priority on based upon factors, not just periodicity. There may be other reasons to associate higher priority to processes. So, if you consider the mix of the processes is such that all higher priority processes are existing when I am considering the scheduling of a lower priority process, we land up into what is called worst phase. And if in the worst phase we can show that a task can be scheduled meeting its first deadline, then it will continue to meet for all subsequent periods, because I have done the worst case analysis. Okay. So, for the purpose of deciding whether a set of tasks can be scheduled, because this becomes a very important requirement when you are designing an embedded system, because I am telling you that in many of the cases the set of tasks that embedded system will handle are known a priori. If they know known a priori, then if I can do a worst case schedulability analysis, then only I can say that given the current hardware, given the current OS, this mix of tasks can be supported on that embedded appliance such that the deadlines are met. So, what kind of schedulability test that we should carry out for this kind of worst case phasing? One such test is known as scheduling point test. There are various tests people have proposed, and they have various properties with the tests. We shall not go into them. We shall just look into one such test, because it is intuitively easier to understand. This is called scheduling point test. A scheduling point is a point in time when new work arrives or the beginning of a new period for some task in the task set. We have seen that's exactly the point where the tasks get scheduled. So, such points we are referring to as scheduling point. And what is the exact schedulability test? If there exists a scheduling point at or before the deadline of a new task, at which all work initiate up to that point has been completed, then the new task is schedulable, because there is nothing really pending. So, what we say, since the workload includes the compute time of the current task as well as all higher priority tasks, if the work is completed, then the new task can meet its deadline. Okay. So, at which all work initiated up to that point has been completed. If there exists a schedulability point at which all work initiated up to that point has been completed, that means I can really meet the deadline. In fact, this is a very intuitive way to do the checking. So, let us look at graphically how it looks like. Consider an example where I have got mix of 3 tasks. Okay. Task 1, 2, 3, and each one of them has got computation 1 and 2 40 time, computation time 40, and this 100, and their units basically, if you look into it, is the same common unit. This is basically the time, okay, corresponding to the deadlines, and this is, it will be, and here what we are considering, the period and the time for the deadline maybe actually is coincident, and this is the utilization if you look at corresponding to the periods that is consumed by the computation if they are scheduled. Now, I would like to use a schedulability test to determine if the third task meets its deadlines, first deadline. In fact, if you look into that RMA, depending on the RMA or rate monotonic scheduling policy, obviously what I shall have, task T1 highest priority, task T2 next priority, then I get really the task T3. So, look at the timeline for the example, okay. So, in this timeline, if you see here exactly the task T1 is getting scheduled, okay, and I assume that T is the periodicity as well as that of the deadline. The time T2 would be scheduled only at this point, fine, and what we are looking at, only when both T1 and T2 is not there, I can schedule T3, okay. So, T3 it's getting scheduled at this point for some period, then T1 arrives, again T3 is getting scheduled, again T1 is getting scheduled, okay. For small interval T3 can come in. Now, T2, the task 2 comes in, tau2 task, second task comes in. So, the task T3 gets preempted, it comes back here, again it comes back and finishes the task at this point. So, if you look at this, this is a scheduling point. This is a scheduling point because the other two tasks have arrived, and if I look at this scheduling point, by this scheduling point all the jobs which have been started have finished. That means I can have my what completes task 3 completes its work by T equal to 300 at time 300, and hence it meets the deadline. So, this is basically the schedulability point. If such a schedulability point exists for a mix of a task, then I say that a task is schedulable, meeting the deadline. That such a schedulability point should exist at a time point which is less than the deadline for that task, okay. And in fact, you can realize that since these periods are known a priori, the computation times are known a priori, I can carry out the schedulability test before we actually, what we say, admit a job. Admitting a job means whether a job would join the ready queue. If I join ready queue, if a job joins a ready queue, then only it becomes a candidate for scheduling. If it fails a schedulability test, the job will not join the ready queue and the system will flag that these requests cannot be serviced. So, this is basically an interpretation of what we had already looked at. So, what we say that each time T3 resumes its work, it is preempted before completion until T equal to 300, and task T3 completes all its work at exactly the fourth scheduling point, okay. It completes all its work before its first deadline at T equal to 350 and therefore schedulable. And we have also considered what? The worst phase scenario, because all tasks with higher priorities were existing when we were considering schedulability of the task T3. In fact, earliest deadline first can also be applied to periodic scheduling, okay. And in fact, what we say that EDF, since it's an optimal with the preemption, is optimal also for periodic scheduling, and EDF must be able to schedule even if RMS fail. In fact, that's the basic idea you find, because EDF can actually schedule according to the deadlines, okay, and it can preempt and schedule in a dynamic fashion. So, let us look at this example. This is an example where there is a deadline miss here, okay. There is a deadline miss here, and RM, we had already seen this example, needs to schedule it in the subsequent phase. But what does EDF do here? EDF at this point prevents T2 being preempted. Why? Because it is now using at this scheduling point, because what happens when this T1 arrives, it recalculates the priority of the processes. Since it recalculates the priority of the processes, now what happens? The T2 has got an earlier deadline, so T2 will not be preempted. Okay, so T2 will continue to finish, it will meet the deadline, then only T1 will get scheduled. Okay, so obviously EDF can meet the deadline in cases where RM fails. Now, but what is the advantage of RM, rate monotonic? Advantage is this priority is decided right at the point when the task arrives. Okay, so the priority is decided only once, fine. But in this case, in case of EDF, what you find that at every scheduling point, priority is being determined dynamically. Okay, so in that sense, EDF is dynamic scheduling algorithm compared to that of rate monotonic, and that's why EDF also has got a more overhead in terms of scheduling time. Okay, so but I can this example illustrates that there are cases where RM would fail, but EDF will meet the requirement. Now, what we are coming to is a static scheduling scheme. Static scheduling is scheduling done completely at the time of design and not really in a runtime. So, we can look at this table driven scheduling is a way of implementing that. See, order of process execution is determined at design time. So, in fact, this can be done for a strictly periodic process scheduling if I know strictly the periods of the processes. Processes can also be merged into a sequence to minimize context switching overhead, okay? Because this you are deciding a priori during design time itself. And the processes communicating with static data flow triggered by the same event can be clustered and scheduled statically, okay? What does it mean? Processes, so I am talking of now dependent processes because there has to be a data flow between the processes. Triggered by the same event can be clustered and scheduled statically. That means they would work in a sequence because there is a data flow between them. And these allows for local data flow optimization including pipelining and buffering, because this data flow becomes critical because of the pipelining. Because see, pipelining, if pipeline is not completely full, I cannot really exploit the pipelining architecture. So, in this case, if I know the pattern of a data flow between the dependent tasks, and if I can do the scheduling at the design time, I can make sure the data flow is such that the pipeline is getting optimally utilized. So, these are possible if you really know the job mix at the design time. You can take care of the pipelining scheduling issue and cluster the jobs and decide on the static schedule. The next thing what we look at, so what we have looked at periodic, we have looked at tasks which are not necessarily periodic. Now we shall look at a kind of a mixed scenario, okay, where there may be some tasks which are periodic, some tasks which are non-periodic. So the situation becomes more complex. So let there be n periodic tasks in the system and assume that periodic jobs are released at unexpected time instance and they join the periodic job queue, okay. Timer sends a kth interrupt at time tk and schedule tasks from schedule at timer interrupts, and time intervals between scheduling points are referred to as frames. So obviously the scheduler is coming into play at a fixed instance, and that fixed instance is decided by the timer, okay. So here what we use a kind of a cyclic executive algorithm, okay, and this is also on the basis of the knowledge of the kind of job mix that you expect to get. So what do? You accept timer interrupt at time instant tk, okay. If current job is not completed, take appropriate action. That means I need to save its status, okay, so that it can be scheduled next. If job is not yet released, take appropriate action. That means if a job is waiting, not yet released means what? The job will now join the ready queue, okay. Now wake up, next what you do? You wake up periodic server to execute jobs in the current block. That means now if there are some periodic jobs, so I use a periodic scheduler, okay, to execute the periodic jobs, and you sleep, the scheduler will sleep until periodic server completes. What does periodic server do? Periodic server can schedule the jobs following strictly a rate monotonic algorithm. It can follow a rate monotonic algorithm, even it can follow an EDF algorithm depending on which algorithm I am trying to use. But there can be a static schedule drawn as well. How the static schedule can be drawn in this such a case, and which becomes very simplified. If you look into the tasks, minimum time required to execute tasks such that deadlines and periods are met is called hyperperiod. Okay, if I look at a set of tasks such that deadlines and periods are met, if we consider my deadlines and periods coincident, then this becomes strictly a period. What would be that hyperperiod? That hyperperiod would be basically what? The least common multiple of the periods. Periods of the tasks, periodic tasks, which the periodic server is serving. And if you consider an offline scenario, that means you already know the periodicity, you can always compute the hyperperiod. Okay. And other issue is what? Frame size is what? Frame size is time interval between the scheduling instance, because the timer is scheduling the scheduler between the time instance. Obviously, if periodic server to work, what you require? You require the frame size should be larger than execution time of every process. That means it should be more than that of max of the execution type of all the processes which are under consideration. If it is less than that, you cannot really draw up a fixed schedule for the periodic server. And frame size should be chosen such that hyperperiod has an integer number of frames. Okay? Hyperperiod is a LCM of all the periods. So if your frame size f is what? Is included in the hyperperiod integral number of times, then what it means? All periodic jobs can actually be scheduled, because at the frame intervals the scheduler is coming into play, okay, and it is not coming into play in between because it's an integral number. So depending on the periodicity of the jobs at each scheduling instant, the jobs can be scheduled. Okay, and all these computations can be done if you really know a priori the set of periodic jobs. Next comes what happens with the aperiodic jobs. Okay, so when the periodic server has released that while the aperiodic job queue is non-empty, wake up the job at the head of queue, sleep until aperiodic job completes, remove aperiodic job from queue, end while, and sleep until next clock interrupt. This becomes a very trivial kind of a scenario. So in this case, obviously what you are finding is aperiodic jobs are being given least priority. Okay, this can only be done only when a periodic server has finished its job. Okay, so aperiodic jobs are given the bad average response time. If you remember our definition of aperiodic jobs, are jobs which occur occasionally, but they really do not have deadline associated with it. And that is the reason why I can wait till the periodic server completes its job to look at the aperiodic jobs. But can we improve upon the average response time? This leads to what is called slack stealing to improve average response time. Every periodic job slice must be scheduled in a frame that ends no later than its deadline. That's a basic requirement we have already looked at from the periodic server. And let the total amount of time allocated to all slices in frame k be xk. Okay. Now what would be the slack time available? F minus xk, depending on the job mix that is available, depending on the frame time that has been chosen. Okay. Now I have already told you what? The frame time should be chosen in such a way that there is an integral number of frame time in the hyperperiod, and hyperperiod is known a priori. So if the frame time is so chosen and such that after allocation of the time to the jobs with deadline with the periodicity, I have k slack time, then in each frame, okay, I allocate this slack time to the aperiodic jobs. This would improve upon your average response time for the aperiodic jobs. So this is typically handled when you have a mix of a periodic jobs with deadlines with aperiodic jobs which really does not have deadlines. But the problem becomes more critical with the sporadic jobs. Sporadic jobs are what? Jobs with deadlines. They arrive in an aperiodic fashion, but they have got strict deadlines. Okay. So what we say that since sporadic jobs have hard relative deadlines, they should be completed or rejected immediately if scheduler cannot find a feasible schedule. Okay. And when rejected, appropriate remedial actions can be taken in time. Let's look at an example. It's a quality control system using a robo-arm. Camera detects a defective part on a conveyor belt and robo-arm is to remove it. So sporadic task is what? To remove is the sporadic task and it is to be removed within a time interval. Deadline is fixed as function of conveyor belt speed. Okay. And if the removal cannot be accomplished, if this sporadic task cannot be scheduled and deadline can be made, it is to be detected. If I can detect it, I can raise an alarm so that manual operator can remove it. This is how in most of the cases the sporadic scheduling is taken care of. Obviously for sporadic job scheduling, the basic policy to be used will be EDF, earliest deadline first. So use an acceptance test to check whether a new sporadic job can be scheduled along with existing periodic jobs. Scheduler maintains queue of accepted sporadic jobs in non-decreasing order of deadlines. Run your cyclic executive algorithm to pick up sporadic jobs from this queue to execute in slack time. Okay. So if you cannot meet the deadline for a given slack time, then you don't accept the job. Okay. And you can always calculate the slack time because you know the mix of the jobs a priori. Now these processes do share in many cases resources. Okay. And these resources in many cases can be mutually exclusive resources. Examples, sockets, printers. And these resources are allocated to a job on a non-preemptive basis. Okay. Since they are allocated on a non-preemptive basis, another process which is requiring this resource cannot work. If that be the situation, then this resource demand can cause a deadline miss, or under that condition your scheduling policies have to be revised. So we say that two jobs conflict with one another if they require the same resource. Two jobs contend with one another if one job requests for a resource already held by another job. And when a job does not get the request resource, it is blocked, moved from the ready queue. If it is moved from the ready queue, there can be actually a deadline miss. So typically when there is an exclusive access, you use semaphores or critical sections for the managing the exclusive access. Here I am showing P and S, the two operators. What happens is PS checks semaphore to see if resource is available, and if yes, sets S to used, and once it is inside, the task is uninterrupted. Okay. VS tests S to unused, okay, sets S to unused. When you come out of that critical section, use VS and you starts sleeping task if any. If your task is sleeping because of these, then that will be waken up, and that's the basic semaphore mechanism. Now what happens under those conditions? If you see, if a task is blocked here, then the priority actually gets inverted. T1 has got a greater priority, but since T1 is blocked, now T2 works. So this is what is known as priority inversion. And priority inversion period in this case is bounded by the length of the critical section. Now there can be other problems. The duration of priority inversion can be more than 2 tasks. Because why? Because here you have got T2 preempts T3 and T2 can prevent T3 from releasing the resource. Okay, because T2 has got a higher priority than that of T3. Okay. So in that case, this priority inversion can be of longer period. Okay. So we need policies to overcome these problems. So I have got into the more complex scheduling scenario, and this is really a complex problem in the context of various embedded systems. So what we have studied today is the scheduling policies for real-time tasks. We have understood properties of these key scheduling policies, And we have found that issues related to access of shared resources can really cause problems. Okay, there would be what is called a priority inversion. A higher priority task would wait because some other task is actually in execution. In fact, there has been various real life problems. We shall discuss that in the next class in terms of your Mars Pathfinder robo. A failure occurred because of your priority inversion. So, how this priority inversion problem has to be taken care of, we shall discuss in the next class. Any questions?
Sir, in the first scheduling that we discussed EDF, we did not take care of L, the elapsed time. I mean, we just take care of the execution time and after the
See, the point is, the question is whether in earliest deadline first scheduling algorithm you take care of the slack time. When we are looking at earliest deadline first algorithm, we really do not consider the slack time, because I can really do deadline first scheduling without knowing the computation time. What I need to know is my arrival time, okay, and the deadline, and the scheduling is on the basis of absolute deadlines. The job having what earliest absolute deadline is given the maximum priority. So, actually I do not take care of the slack time. In the slack time first scheduling, I do this priority assignment on the basis of slack time. So, the requirement there is to know the time required for computation of the associated with the task.